History of Modern seemed to be the most appropriate title for a new album for a band that's been around for over 30 years.
I think people will recognise it as an OMD album. I mean, we've decided to go back to our earlier, more electronic roots.
Every precious child and every mother's kiss, all who went before, all who follow this, every moment shared, hour of the day, no record will remain, all will fade away.
We have consciously embraced the sounds that I think people will recognise as being OMD.
We wanted to bring all those sort of sounds into the now, but do it in a more modern way.
Another has begun.
Playing a synth that sounds like a digital 90s synth now is out of fashion. Playing a synth that sounds like 1981 is very in fashion. These are the vagaries of musical fashions. So this album, we have really enjoyed making something that we think sounds incredibly current, but is also some of the sounds that we delighted in inventing and creating 30 years ago.
I think we decided to go more purist this time and be a lot more electronic. I mean, there's still some organic elements. I mean, we haven't been very, sort of Kraftwerkian about it or anything. We've decided to be, to be free with it, but nevertheless use a lot more of those flavours from the past. But not to sound retro. It was very important for us not to sound like it was an album made in 1980. We don't want to do that.
I really like this. Actually, one of the interesting things is that was an accident.
Yeah, that was an accident. That's one of your original samples from the chorus, and I cut it, and one of them was just left. It was the tail end of it finishing was just left in the verse. I went, ooh, I like that.
Yeah. I think it's got a good balance on the new album of our sort of sound from the early days, but trying to bring it into 2010.
History of Modern seemed to be the most appropriate title because we were, I guess, the last generation of modernists. Popular music was probably the last of the cultural exploits to embrace modernism. It had already been done in architecture and design and art. But of course we now live in the postmodern era, so modernism, I guess, is an old art form. I guess it's partly just showing that we're aware of the dilemma perhaps that we're in. Are we just doing a retro-futurist album? Is there still a relevance to it? So History of Modern, very appropriate title. The original reason to get back together again was just to do some concerts because we really wanted to play live again.
It's been great to get back together. The complete original lineup with Mal Holmes and Martin Cooper as well. That was the original core of the band in the early 80s.
We'd always enjoyed each other's company. We'd certainly always enjoyed touring, and offered the opportunity to do it again. We grasped it with both hands and discovered that we could still do it, and in fact in some ways we're possibly better on stage than we ever were before. Once we started playing live again and we got back on the radar, we were offered opportunities that I don't suppose we ever would have thought we would have had. And so the chance to do art installations with the artist Peter Saville, to do concerts with the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra, to be invited to go to Shanghai, and another one we've been doing this year is to play at the National Museum of Computing at Bletchley Park, where they cracked all the codes. We are loving doing all this really weird stuff because it does make it much more interesting than just sticking to the usual rock and roll parameters.
It was actually fun to sort of dissect our earlier songs and rebuild them in a completely new format, like an orchestral format. And having a full orchestra play your song, which is just a very simple electronic song, be played by 75 people on the stage in a full orchestra. And we weren't quite sure if it was going to work, but we loved it. It was so fantastic, you know, just like to play the Maid of Orleans. I come in on my little Mellotron synth and hear an entire string section join me behind, and it would just send goosebumps down my spine.
I think people will recognise it as being distinctively OMD, and in fact I think it probably leans most heavily on the very early sound of Orchestral Rhythms in the Dark, with the analogue synthesizers and the Mellotron sound.